Terrific. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We have with us today Dave Karp. And before we jump in, I just want to kind of ground the conversation for the listeners. Dave and I aren't meeting for the first time today. We've known each other for about 15 years as colleagues and friends across different chapters of work and life. And over that time, Dave has served both as a chief technology officer and a chief executive officer, which means he's been accountable not just for ideas, but for decisions made under pressure with incomplete information and real consequences attached. And what's always stood out to me about Dave isn't his titles, but his relationship to judgment, how he thinks when things aren't obvious, when timelines compress, and when there isn't a clean or comfortable answer. So today isn't an interview built on a resume. It's more like a conversation rooted in experience, trust, and inquiry. So, Dave, I'm really glad you're here.
It's my pleasure. I'm super stoked about this, Terry, and appreciate the intro. And yeah, for your listeners, it is a long history of relationship that we've had and that we've both been able to learn from and mature through. And so it's truly a pleasure.
Thanks so much. I want to start simply. So, when you think back over the last few years, what's a decision that felt straightforward at the time, but later revealed more weight than you expected?
Um, Great question. There's probably a number, and they vary based on your experience up to that point, right? And you know that you're about to embark upon a challenge, and it's a challenge because you haven't experienced it before, versus the familiar ground where you walk into a situation and it's like, nah, I know what I need to do. Let's just go do it. I can think of those, from personal decisions of changes in role and company. The you know you and I actually had talked about this once before, and I said, I had an opportunity to change jobs early in my career, and the minute I became scared, that I felt fear in the unknown, the uncertainty of what was about to occur, that I was going to embark on something new and take a challenge, that was the moment that I realized I have no choice but to do this. That was a good decision. It turned out to be a short one, so I'd also say that fear kind of manifested itself. However, I think as you kind of go through the ebb and flow of things, it it also prepared me for future position. And you look for and learn from your failures in life, and failures lead to future success. And so you've got kind of the combination of, do you embark upon this thing that is new and is unfamiliar to you? Might you face failure in the process? Yes, and that's okay. Do it, embrace it, learn from it. I've had those happen, from product perspectives. I've had decisions that were unpopular that have resulted in changes in my course trajectory. I think as anybody that has ever been fired from a position knows that you want to learn from that, and that you might have maybe you can associate something that you could have done differently. As long as you came out of it with your integrity intact, you're solid, right? And so it's more about the learning experience that you gained, and how you're going to apply that in the future, and utilize it to propel future success.
Yeah, that really resonates, Dave. Um, but at the time, what kind of pressure were you under? Was it time? Was it expectations? Was it responsibility? Something else?
It could be a combination of all of those. It could be simply inconsistency in expectation, differences of opinion in what it's going to take to ensure success. Even if you're presenting a well-defined position, there may be distinct differences that exist in opinions within the room that if you believe strongly in something, you should lean into it. And sometimes the belief that you have can result in in you having to go do something different.
Mhm. Well, here's, following up on that, here's something I've been curious about. In that moment, did you feel clear or did you feel certain? And do you see the difference between those now?
Yeah, yeah, and I think even the retrospective is I felt certain, right? I felt confident because I've always come from a place of if you don't know, admit it. That it's okay to not know everything. So when you know instinctively and you know that you have the supporting data and some things are driven by feel throughout our life, throughout our career.
Mhm.
When you feel confident and you're certain of something, stay the course. Outside influences, positive outside influences, you want to take on. You want to be able to know the difference between the positive ones and the negative ones, and um, and stay true to yourself.
So do you think experience helped there, or did it narrow the field faster than you realized?
Oh, I think experience helped for sure. I think experience helped ensure that it helped instill the confidence, right? In knowing that it was a clear decision. And I think that's yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it because everything you do is going to come with a bit of chaos, and you got to kind of get through that. We my background, the military background, you kind of refer back to things like the OODA loop and how do you observe and how do you act and how do you ensure that you can be decisive in the moment. So you are relying on your experience, your instincts to help you there. You're also relying on data, right? Metrics are important, right? This isn't you don't mature through your career simply on gut feel. Metrics matter. It's probably metrics are probably a tangent that we could talk about and we could talk about those that believe so strongly in metrics and KPIs and things of that nature that they drive all their decisions off of them without ever stopping to engage in a conversation with those that you're holding to those to say, are these even right? Right? They felt right when we defined them and we defined them collectively, and they were the they were the North Star, or they were driven off the North Star for the year, and these are the things that we were going to do. And do you stop and pause 90 days in and go, are those the right metrics? Before you start passing judgment on people for perceived failure, it's are these and you got to kind of stop and peel that back and think about it and go, well, maybe they are, maybe they're not, and maybe they are in certain scenarios or for certain people, but not others. So let's take into consideration the individual.
Yeah,
So I think things like that, yeah.
that's worthy insight. Um, when the stakes rise for you, uh, what do you notice changes in how you decide? Not what you decide, but how you decide.
When the stakes are high, the how uh, probably becomes a bit more of an extended discussion with the people closest to me, the people I trust. You know, you depend on people. You know, my wife is the best person I have to, talk something through with and come to a conclusion, whether she's helping me or just listening to me, right? And sometimes it's just listening is all I need. I need to talk it through. I need to get to that place of truth, and to get there a lot of times, it's soliciting some feedback, listening to the feedback, but sometimes you just got to talk it out. And as long as time's not the enemy at that point, right? Because a no decision is a decision, right? But when you've got a little bit of time and you're not on the spot,
Mhm.
I think the biggest difference is how you go through the motions of talking it through to find your own answer. I think you surround yourself with people who know you well,
Mhm.
because they're important. They're not there to service your ego. They're there to remind you of your strengths.
Mhm.
And when you get into that and you have that opportunity to kind of step out of the situation and assess things and look and evaluate, you you want to rely on those people closest to you. And again, I think that's really key, because when you think about the people around you that you're listening to, I think there are some people that get into kind of the trap of, are people just telling you what you want to hear?
Mhm.
I like those that can engage in the conversation and remind me, hey, your strength, what you're forgetting is this, and you go, wait a minute, that's a great point. I did forget that. It kind of elevates you above the madness for a moment, and you get to kind of stop and really kind of think it through. You can get overwhelmed by the stress if you're trying to do it alone.
Yeah, very clear. So, Dave, is there a moment when speed starts to replace clarity, even if it feels like decisiveness?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think there are times when decisions don't have a definitive, clean answer, but time does become that enemy, and you've got no choice but to lean back in, leverage your instincts, lean back into your past experiences, both good and bad, rationalize it, make a decision, and move on. Come back to it, because it's okay to you can make a bad decision, you can reverse the decision, hopefully. Hopefully we're not talking about the kind of decisions that are irreversible. Um, those can exist as well, but you kind of really want to be in that position where you make the decision, but come back to it. Come back to it, come back around, and ask yourself, did we make the right decision? Are we headed in the right direction as a result of it? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to stop, pause, and go, hey, maybe I didn't make the right decision, or what, maybe a different decision would have been better. How about that? And let's stop. Let's think about it. Let's learn from it, and let's adapt. It's very akin to building any kind of product, right? It's totally iterative. It never stops. The evolution is constant. And I think that if you just make a decision, cut bait, move on, to the next, you got to kind of stop and go back and rethink and go, okay, how we do things, how we grow, how we learn, is also iterative.
Hmm. I just want to pick up on a word I heard you say because I use it a lot with people, leaders I talk to, is the word clean, right? So, how do you personally know when your judgment is clean versus when pressure is quietly shaping it?
Have you thought about how you're going to measure it? Um, is it measurable? Start with that, right? Start with that because most things are. Do we understand? Do we have the metrics we need? Have we defined it clearly so that we can ensure that we can measure the success of the choices that we made? Like I said, instinctively, you might know this is good, but how do you validate that? We probably drive into, a conversation that, was one of my favorite topics on, anything from avoiding the traps of self-fulfilling prophecy to do you get into a scenario of take the early stage startup examples of driving to product market fit, and every investor is, do you have product market fit? And everybody's talking about PMF, 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 and you're like, wait a minute, you're you're way out there and we're way back here, right? Let's talk about how we can get to that. How do we measure that? What does that mean to you? Those are things. So it, I think, yeah, I mean, I think clean it needs to be definable, needs to be somewhat measurable. And then let's look at what we're doing along the way to ensure that we know whether, again, we made the right or wrong decision.
Hmm, insightful. So, one pattern I keep noticing across leaders is that judgment rarely fails loudly, right? It kind of narrows quietly. Does that resonate with your experience?
Yeah, I've probably had a couple of personal examples where it was loudly. We'll just say that they led to better opportunity. But no, I think that's true, and again, I think that's why it's so important to go back and revisit it, and make certain, and I think some element of measurement or metric will help you along the way of understanding whether it was right or wrong, but I agree with you. I do think that a lot of them can be quiet until they're not. And that's why it's important to revisit them, because if you don't, they'll sneak back up on you, and all of a sudden you're in a reactionary state, and you've lost the ability to be proactive. I prefer to be proactive. I prefer to be able to try to see what's coming and adapt and adjust to it before it happens. Get ahead of it.
Really?
I think everybody knows the analogies of, skate to where the puck is going. Get ahead of it is the key, right? Try to stay ahead of it. Yeah.
So looking back, what's a decision you're grateful you paused on where, restraint mattered more than speed?
Um, I think a lot of those might actually probably tie more back directly into people and decisions we make about them. Um, I see avoid the rush to judgment, right? You kind of think about it maybe a little bit differently. How do you evaluate people if you don't understand what motivates them,
Hmm.
right? If you don't understand the things that motivate somebody, then how can you mutually participate in their success and teach them and groom them and help them grow, right? By helping the others around you, you in turn will grow. So I think avoiding the rush to judgment on people. I've seen that happen with equally with product decisions, or decisions on when did you pivot too quickly? Did you give time for your message to market to soak? Did you really understand what would work, what wouldn't work? And pivoting too soon without having fully evaluated and assessed it. Those happen. I've seen that happen. The rush to judgment, and again, you can apply that to whether you're talking about people's performance, and on the individual side to your product, feature functionality, to your messaging, your market opportunity. It's in any instance, the rush to judgment. I think that's the key.
So what helps you pause now that didn't earlier in your career?
Age, wisdom, the things you can't teach, you got to learn.
Yeah, the wisdom part of it. I like that.
Uh, but patience,
Right.
um, patience for sure. Um, uh, I, I had a conversation that probably a lot of people can relate to. I had a conversation with one of my adult children, and he was in a scenario, and he said, "What do you think about this?" And I was like, "I think you're being a little hasty and quick, and probably even a little bit of you get a little criticism in your tone in that response, probably less than ideal."
Mm.
And I said, I prefer to avoid conflict. And he goes, "Since when?" And it was good. It was good to hear. First off, I was like, "Well, okay, but you our relationship probably a little bit different than than my business relationship." But then when you stop and you really think about it, you go, "Well, was that true when you were young?" Right? Has that always been the case? So it kind of made me sit and pause, but it was a great conversation because I'm like, well, yeah, it's a fair question, as you're looking at it from your perspective. So I'm gonna share, I'm gonna part this wisdom upon you, right? Take a beat,
I
think
love
about
that.
it.
I love that. Such a straightforward, honest question. That's not necessarily looking out for your feelings, just, straight question, right up there. And that's the kind of feedback I love, that sort of thing.
Agreed.
So
I think, you know what? There's another component in there, Terry, when you think about over relying on what used to work. And you think about, what got you here may not get you there.
right.
Um, I think those kind of play a factor as well. And that's kind of where the personal, introspective has to occur. You got to stop. I used to run a sales team, and you get to your QBRs, and I'd force that conversation. What worked, what didn't work, what did you learn personally, what will you do differently? Let's talk about it.
Hmm. I agree with you 1,000% on that one, Dave. The operating system that got you to where you are isn't necessarily the same one you need for where you're going. And I've noticed that, and I think for a lot of people, it's almost like they induce breakdowns intentionally to kind of uh, calibrate the system for a new challenge. And yeah, so I think that's a brilliant insight you have there.
Well, good companies will break the system, right? They'll
Hmm.
break it just to put it back together in the sense of even if it's a mental exercise, even if it's part of your offsite, right? Let's tear it down and put it back together. We do the same.
Right. So if someone's listening right now and they're facing a decision that still feels unsettled, but nothing is obviously wrong yet, what would you invite them to pay attention to?
Question everything. Um, Write it down. Go through the pros and cons at the personal level. Talk about it with your family. Talk about it with your peers that you trust, with the people that helped you get to where you are. We avoid traps, right? Busy doesn't equal productivity. You know, you God, there's just so many things I think about. Go through the mental exercise of have you ever heard of the four burner theory?
No.
So four burner theory is essentially the four burners of the stove. Each burner is aligned to one for family, one for friends, one for health, and one for work. And the theory says that to be successful, you have to turn off one of the burners. Which one are you going to turn off? What might you have to and maybe you might think, okay, you know what? You can be successful and manage all four of those. You probably can't manage them all four equally at any one given time.
Hmm.
So going through the exercise of what do you turn off, knowing that you might have to. It's important to understand that up front. What are the trade-offs? At least go through the feeling, the thought. Even if you don't believe that it is those four things, you got to kind of go through the what the give to get is.
Hmm.
There are some that say to be ultra successful, you got to turn off two of those. That's a little scary. Which two would you turn off? Right? If the ultimate goal is you're defining your success by the outcome and achievement of your professional career, and you had to give up one of those other three, which one would it be? So, I mean, I think it's part of that mental exercise that you got to go through, and do know that you got to manage those things because they can get out of hand, and you might unintentionally turn one off. So it's pretty important, I think, to pause and think about if I do this, do I have to dial something down in order to do it? As long as you come out of that with the choice being I'm prepared for that. I'm
Hmm.
prepared for that. Or you now understand it, you might be better able to control
Well, I think you know enough about me to say, I'm an advocate of four burners.
it. I know
And
you are.
I think it's a matter of degree, but for me, it's really about why are you here? What's life's purpose? And if you shut one of those burners off, I think you're missing the mark.
That's
And
right.
uh,
But you now know you went through that exercise, you know that,
right.
right? But so you know where the inflection point is that you've got to also stop
Hmm.
to avoid the risk of the flame going out. Remember on the stove, you can adjust the flame,
Hmm.
right? And all four burners got to be on high all the time. You're probably burning something.
Right. So Dave, I really appreciate the way you sit with all the questions, and by the way, not one swear word. Yeah,
Let me tell
no,
you, you might not ask the right question.
that could be, not to answer them quickly, but to, let them reveal something over time. So thanks for bringing that presence into this conversation. I greatly appreciate it.
I love it. I love it. I hope our listeners get something out of it. I'm going to look forward to the next one because I know we got a lot of topics to cover in time.
A lot of topics. Thanks again, Dave, and thank you to everyone participating in listening or viewing the podcast. And until the next episode, stay in the inquiry.